Because once you transfer your money from your bank account to their bank account, the game is on. And if things don't go well, you'll never see that money again. Do we have anybody who's a fashion startup? Anybody here that's getting started up for the first time? Awesome. Do we have any factory owners? Any factory owners in the audience? No. How about anybody who's come to Vietnam for the very first time? No. Okay. So my name is Chris, and today we're talking about the gap between sampling and production. Aside from taking people on factory tours, I also do a lot of consulting where I help fashion startups. And this presentation is targeted for fashion startups. It's full of practical tips of what it's like to go through the sampling process and then make it across the gap and through production. Let's see, check to see if this works. Okay, so sampling begins with an idea. And you might be wondering, why is Chris wearing a hoodie? Well, because this was my idea. Normally I don't wear hoodies to presentations, but I had an idea to create a sublimated hoodie, and I wore it today to show you that I walk the walk, not just talk the talk. So you got an idea. The next thing to do is to get your idea on paper, because you're trying to communicate your idea to factories in China, Vietnam, India, Egypt, wherever, and they have different language, different culture, different ways of thinking. So writing things down on paper is just helps with the communication. So this is the tech pack that I created for my hoodie. I also help people with tech packs. I've written a book on it. It's a passion of mine. At a minimum, your tech pack should have at least one page. On the front side, you would have your bill of materials. On the back side, you would have your size chart. Those are two basic minimum things, but there's you also want to include flats, illustrations, things like the information for your care labels, your hang tags, the poly bags, and another very important thing to include in your tech pack is what's called the point of measurement chart, so that when they go to do their quality control checks, they're not just looking at a list of numbers to check, but they know exactly where to check. Very important. So tech pack is a big part of beginning the sampling phase. Third is the variation, so the iteration. So I just brought along some temples. So this was my version 1, and then this was version 2, and this one is fresh off the production line, version 3. I could speak for hours on all the different the variations in the samples, the lessons that I learned, and all the changes that were made. But the point here is that a lot of people just don't realize, if you haven't been through it yet, that it actually takes a long time to iterate. And when you start working with the factory shows you things, or you see things, and you get ideas, and you start making changes. And a process that you think might take a week or two can end up taking literally like 3 months. And time is money. So a lot of people don't realize how expensive this whole process can be. So, all right, next. Then the question is, well, when does sampling end? When you have your golden sample, and that's the sample that will be hung on the sewing lines for the team leader of the sewing line to reference if there's any questions from the sewers as to exactly how to sew it. And it's also used for quality control. So if there's problems when you're doing inline inspections, you can quickly grab the golden sample and reference it to try to figure out what's right and what's wrong. This second point here is something unique to me, because although I'm not a lawyer, I really like getting into the details and writing things down, as you saw by the tech pack. And I strongly recommend to my clients to create what I call a production contract. It's really just a MOU. It's not an official legal contract. But you want to think of everything that could possibly go wrong. And then say, okay, if this goes wrong, what will I do as the brand? And what do I expect the factory to do? Things like payment terms. When do the payments need to be made? And payments don't just happen, I mean, if you're paying by PayPal, sure, it can happen in minutes. But if you have to do an international bank transfer, it can take days. So you write that down, you know, what are the expectations? How quickly do you expect the payments to come? Another one is to write down like an ideal timeline as to how this whole process is gonna pan out. Because if you've never been through it before, you just don't have any idea, you know, how long does it take to get the fabric from China? How long does it take to get custom engraved buttons made? And if you work with the factory and work out a timeline and put it in the production contract, then everybody's kind of on the same page and knows what to expect, what the milestones will be, and there's no surprises. So let's see, what else? Quality control. You know, like just talk about quality control. Are you going to do inline inspections? Yes or no? Are you going to do a third-party inspection? Who is that third-party company? Put the details in there so the factory knows what to expect. They know that SGS is going to come in or Intertech is going to come in. And so yeah, the production contract is very important, and it should be done before you hit the edge of the gap. Final thing is the deposit. This is when the game really begins, because once you transfer your money from your bank account to their bank account, the game is on. And if things don't go well, you'll never see that money again. And it can be in the thousands. If you're a startup, it can be in the thousands of dollars, which is a lot of money that you don't want to just never see again. So sampling ends when you've got the golden sample, you've got a production contract, and you've made a deposit. So when does production begin? As I mentioned earlier, the bill of materials is super important. It's basically a list of everything that goes into the garment, or if it's a wood furniture, everything that goes into the wooden product. And it becomes important when there's, like, let's say you've already made the deposit and the factory comes back and says, oh, you know, we didn't foresee this, but we're gonna have to add 15 cents to the price, which of course you feel cheated, and now what to do? Well, the first thing to do is go back to the bill of material and say, okay, well, let's sit down. Let's talk about the price for every individual item on the bill of material, and let's figure out how we can get the price back to where it needs to be. So, but in terms of production, the factories received your deposit, so they're going to buy all the trims, accessories, and fabrics. They have to get them into the factory, they have to count them, and then do inspections to make sure the quality is good for all the components. Next is there has to be an opening in the production line. And you know, if you've never worked in a production facility or production circumstance, it's hard to imagine how dynamic it is and how many variables there are. And the factories are constantly juggling around their production schedules. And you know, all you care about is when are your garments going to be put on the line. But that date can change depending on the weather. So yeah, when there's an opening in the production line, they can start producing. Finally is, it's just a point to keep in mind that when production begins, I strongly recommend you do an inline inspection, which can be tricky because they might tell you that, oh, on the 1st of January, we're gonna start your production. So you fly over to be here on the 1st of January, and then they tell you, well, you know, we've had a delay because we haven't received the hang tags yet, so production's not gonna start until the 4th. So now you gotta hang around until the 4th. But you wanna be there on the very first day that the garments get put into the line. And you wanna just do idiot checks. You wanna do visuals, pull on the seams, do a quick measurement check. Catch mistakes early in production. Don't wait until the end. So when production begins, you want to do your inline inspections. So when does production end? When they call you and tell you that it's done and everything's packed up in boxes and they're pushing you to have the freight forwarding company come and pick it up. And you say, okay, wait, hold on. I'm going to send the third-party QC company to come in and do a random AQL inspection. So that's very important. The other thing that a lot of people don't know is you really want to look out for the packing list. The packing list is important because the freight forwarding company needs it. They need to know the volume and they need to know the gross weight. And that will be in the packing list. But a lot of times the packing list cannot be done accurately until literally like a week before the end of the whole of the production. So just keep that in mind. Packing list is something that, look for it, and once you see it and you understand it, you'll see the value in it, and it's a key part of the ending stages of production. Finally is your export sales contract. So this is a legal document. It's required, both the packing list and the export sales contract are required for getting your goods through customs and out of Vietnam and also into wherever you're shipping to. And this has to do with taxes. You know, the Vietnamese government wants to know the exact quantity and for what FOB price you're shipping out. So the most important things on this export contract is not all the things that were in the production contract that I mentioned before, right? This is just legal documents. They want to know how many and for what price. And then the Vietnamese government knows how much revenue you made, and that's how they base their corporate taxes and other taxes. So these are the 3 things to look out for during the end of production. So in summary, the gap, what you'll experience in the gap is the golden sample, production contract, and the deposit. When you've reached any one of these milestones, you know you're either crossing the gap, right at the edge of the gap, or on the other side of the gap. So thank you very much for listening. My name is Chris. I'm an American. I've been living here in Vietnam for 15 years, working as a marketing manager for factories, and then I've been working on my own as a consultant for the last 6 years. I offer factory tours where I take you out to visit 3 to 5 factories in a day. And when we're in the car driving around, we talk about all these things that I mentioned today, and I just offer my advice. And thank you very much. Have a wonderful day. And remember, thoughts are things, and where there's a will, there's a way. Welcome to Vietnam. Thank you.